and the Township of Greenbrook, Long Hill, and Warren. Roll call, please, Mr. Stice.
Mr. Chand,
Good.
Mr. Fallon,
Yes.
Mr. Hayek,
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. Zober,
Yes.
Ms. Potter,
Present.
Dr. Shabilsky,
Yes.
Ms. Raban,
Here.
and Ms. Burrow.
Here. Okay.
All right, let me share my screen.
Yep. Okay, can you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
States
of
of America
and
and
to the republic
Republic
for which
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
Under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
and justice for all.
Okay. May I have a motion that in accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, be it hereby resolved that the board move into executive session to discuss confidential personnel and legal matters and student safety and security governed by attorney-client privilege, after which action may be taken. It is expected that the matters discussed in executive session will be made public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Hi, Dennis.
Back.
Dennis, I'll let you back in when we're done with closed session.
Miss Flannelly is here?
Yes, a member of our math department.
Yeah, great.
And Dennis Kelly, our school publicist.
Okay. So we're at the part of our agenda for the first opportunity for public comment. The first public comment period is limited to agenda items for this meeting only. The second public comment period is open to any topic. All comments are limited to 5 minutes. Do you have any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to board discussion. What my suggestion would be is that if we have discussion of any of the action items that anybody wants first, and then I thought I'd and then we do another board discussion at the end. Let's get through the action items and then we'll do a discussion and update as to the reopening plan that the Department of Education dropped on Friday afternoon, because that's apparently what they like to do.
Rita,
Yes.
if I may,
Yes, you
there's
may.
one correction on a D item. It is D, I think it's D5. Yeah, it's D5. So through the diligence of our new IT director, we have a product there, it's called G Suite Google License. And he's been trying to get different quotes, and he did. The one that's on there is from CDW for $7,032. He got a lower one from SHI International using the school board's K-12 contract, and that's $6,299.50.
So we need a motion to change that when we get there, I guess? Okay, $6,299.50.
Right, and that's.
And then I also heard, a little birdie told me that we heard about debt service aid or something.
Yeah, I was going to leave that to the end since your last thing, but I can gladly tell the board that the superintendent passed a state broadcast memo, and I reviewed it. We got all of our debt service aid for the project that you guys, I hope we get to use, the media center project, which, by the way, it's completely gutted in there. And
I heard.
it looks like a huge cave. It's unbelievable how big it is. When there's nothing in there, the space is really, it's quite large. But yeah, so the good news is we got all of our debt service aid.
That's great. Okay, any other discussion about the action items before we go into passing them? Or
Nope.
voting on them? Okay, So action items, can I have a motion for section A?
Madam President, I'd like to move resolutions A1 and A2.
Was there a second?
Greg,
Yeah, Greg.
Since I asked for questions and comments earlier, I'm just going to go through them. Roll call, please.
Dr. Chand,
Yes.
Mr. Fallon,
yes.
Mr. Hayek,
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison. Bob.
Got on mute, Bob.
Sorry, yes. You can't read lips yet, yeah?
He's looking
Not
down.
legally.
Mrs. Ober,
Yes.
Ms. Potter,
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky,
Yes.
Ms. Raban,
Yes.
and Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Madam President, I'd like to move resolutions C1 through C3.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Dr. Chand,
Yes.
Mr. Fallon,
Yes.
Mr. Hayek,
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
No on C1, yes on C2 and C3.
Mrs. Ober,
Yes.
Ms. Potter,
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky,
Yeah.
Ms. Raban,
Yes.
and Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Excuse me. Motion carries. Motion.
Madam President, I'd like to first make a motion to amend Resolution D5, the item regarding the G Suite item, change the vendor to SHI and the amount to $6,299.
Second.
Just do an all in favor, Rita.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Madam President, I'd now like to move resolutions D1 through D6 with D5 as amended.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Dr. Chand,
Yes.
Mr. Fallon,
Yes.
Mr. Hayek,
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Ober,
Yes.
Ms. Potter,
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky,
Yeah.
Ms. Raban,
Yes.
and Ms. Barone.
Yes.
Motion's carry.
Madam President, I'd now like to move resolutions D7 through D9.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Chand,
Yes.
Mr. Fallon,
Yes.
Mr. Hayek,
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Ober,
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky,
Yeah.
Ms. Raban,
Yes.
and Ms. Barone.
Yes.
Motion's carry.
We now have the second opportunity for public comment. Comment period is for any issues and limited to 5 minutes.
And if you just want to use the raise your hand function, if you do have a comment to make. If you click on participants, I believe it's at the bottom of that section. Does
Okay.
we have any?
All right. Seeing no public comment, I'm going to close the second opportunity for public comment, and we can open up board discussion. Dr. Jewett, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about the reopening plan and the structure that you've been starting to put together and like timelines, and then I'll join in.
So on Friday, as I think you're all aware, the governor and the DOE released reopening guidelines. I did read through, as many of you did, all of those. And so we had the structure for putting this whole plan together. It's somewhat similar to our process for other initiatives in the district. So we do have our overarching reopening team, which they called in the plan the Restart Committee. And that has representatives from all key stakeholder groups. Rita's going to talk about us, selecting a board member to be on there. There'll be a parent on there, a student on there. the chief of police or his designee on there, the health official, obviously a number of school administrators, a teacher representative. So that will have a number of people on it. Out of that, we have several smaller teams, reopening teams that are going to plan for different aspects of reopening. One of them is related to curriculum and instruction. One of them has to do with operations. One of them has to do with special education. There's a communications one, and then our general crisis response team, which was already pre-existing in the district. So those smaller teams are going to be meeting the end this week and the beginning of next week. Then there will be the process that we're going to use, and we're still kind of setting this all up because we do have to get this all done within the month of July. So those teams will meet, and then basically the chairs of each of those teams sit on that larger restart committee. That will meet and they will share out what has been discussed at their teams for that larger team to kind of vet and discuss. And then we will also have our board committees meeting because there's, just like anything else, any other recommendations we make regarding curriculum or instruction, even if they don't require a formal board approval, we obviously always vet them with the board committees so that, we make sure that the board is supportive of how we're moving forward. And there will likely be some purchases that are, that come along with some of these things, whether it's for additional virtual learning platforms. With regard to facilities, the board already did approve a number of things related to PPE and cleaning of the facilities, but there will be more related to that as we work out that plan. So that's how that's going to work. So I just ask for your patience this week as I'm trying to get, wanted to get the initial subcommittee schedule set. Then I'll set up the larger committee meeting, and then I'll set up the board committee meetings for next week, because I just want to make sure that they're in a logical sequence. And then our plan is to share the plan with the community at the end of July. It would be right at the end of July or that very beginning of August, because we were told that, and we should be giving folks, 4 weeks notice before school starts anyway. I do have a meeting tomorrow with it's our first county roundtable that we've had since the guidance came out on Friday. And all of the local health officials for Somerset County will be at that meeting. So I imagine this to be a very long meeting, a very active meeting, but that way we can get some of their guidance on the reopening plan, because as those of you who read it saw, there's guidance, but it's not very specific, and it leaves a lot up to us to decide. So, consulting with the health official is obviously going to be essential. And Kevin Sumner, our local health official, has been great through all of this. He has been very, very responsive when I've reached out to him, whether it's with regard to our drive-through graduation, the car parade, or our in-person graduation ceremony, just student drop-off and pickup, some initial conversations about school reopening. So he's been very, very responsive. And we'll be working with him closely, but I'm hoping to get some more clarity as well from the county super tomorrow to find out, it wasn't specific in there if the plan needs to be formally board approved, and those types of things. And with our initial distance learning plan, that actually changed. They initially told us it didn't need to be formally board approved, and then a month later it did. So just trying to get clarification on some of those logistical items to make sure that we have our timeline set up. If we do end up, so the one thing that could come out of this, and we'll know more once we have our initial committee meetings, is if we are going to need a board meeting at the end of July when we finalize the plan. Number one, possibly to approve some items, some business items that require board approval, to discuss the plan as a whole, to approve the plan. So more to come on that. But one of at least the nice things about Zoom is that wherever you are, you can rather easily sign in. So stay tuned on that.
Yeah, so going through it, and I spoke to Dr. Jewett about how to function as a board to make sure that we have input at the level where we can actually digest the information. It seemed to me that the restart committee was very sort of overarching. It really wasn't going to do a lot of the work. It seemed more about like it was the committee that people were going to report to. And it's supposed to have content experts on it, which, if you remember what Dr. Jewett sent earlier, has the health official on it and the police chief. It also suggests in the guidance that you have a student and parent on it. I think mostly that seemed to be to try to make sure that you had stakeholders so that people felt like they were being heard. Dr. Jewett is going to look at parent, I think 1 or 2 parents and 1 or 2 students to be on it. And my thought was, we would just have me on that restart committee because it's huge. And you're not really going to get like the ability to really dig in where you would in the committee function. And if I can't make it because, I'm crazy, we can talk about if Greg comes or if somebody else needs to be on it, just to have some board members circulating through that. I really think most of the work is going to be at our committee level. So that way, like when instructional issues have to come up, they're going to go, you got special ed instructional issues and you got regular ed instructional issues. They go to the education committee. You guys can vet them, talk about them, report back to us, just like we're using our committee structure. Operations is the same thing. Personnel is going to have issues, obviously. We may have negotiation issues in the next 30 days. I don't know. It's possible. This is such a huge undertaking that I think all of our committee structure will be well used. And that's why I think we all need to kind of understand we're probably going to have committee meetings either every week or at least every 2 weeks. And I do definitely think we're going to have to need another meeting at the end of the month. I don't see how we get by without another meeting at the end of the month. I think our July 14th meeting is going to be, whatever committees meet, we're going to talk about where we are and then and then at the end of the month, we're going to have the same thing and hopefully we'll have our plan together and we'll be able to pass it if that's what we have to do. But I think that makes the most sense in doing this structure. And so that's what I was thinking about over the weekend, in addition to trying to figure out if we needed an app to link all our symptoms. All the kids need to tell us if they have any symptoms every day.
Part of this, by the way, the piece that I left out is I'm also obviously collaborating with our K-8s. That's another meeting that's in the midst of all of this. I literally have a list of them, so I know which ones have been set up and what still needs to be set up tomorrow. But we've been communicating on a daily basis through all of this. But we obviously will be, once we get some tentative, we've been talking about different tentative ideas, and we will obviously all coordinate that. So our plans may look a little bit different because the elementary implications of this are different than high school. But obviously with transportation specifically, that's going to require coordination.
So Liz, I don't know if it may, just one thing I wanted to, because I know you got so much on your plate. If you would like me to set up the committee meetings and send those emails out, if that makes sense to you, or if it makes more sense that if you do it, I'm not sure what's the best way.
So like Tim, for example, is the chair of the operations reopening team. So then he'll be able to set up the operations board meeting. I appreciate the offer, but I think because we have the people that are kind of the link to the reopening team. And then
Okay, that's fine.
So I appreciate that. But I think that's what, we're actually, the group of us administratively are meeting tomorrow morning to kind of go through all of this to make sure that this all makes sense. And the other thing that I'll just say to everyone, and you guys have been so understanding through all of this for the past several months, and I said this to the staff with the teams, is that if we realize we need to adjust any of this in terms of, we realize on one of the teams we're missing a key person that we need because of topics that come up, we will make adjustments. It obviously is, this is all new for all of us. So all of the dialogues with as many different people as possible have been helping me. I mean, I've been talking to superintendents all weekend long about what everyone's thinking. Some of them from regional high school districts, some of them K-12 districts, so that we're kind of, I'm collecting all of that, and we'll get as many different approaches as possible. So Greg and Bob have their hands raised, but Rita, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add.
That was it.
So Greg, then Bob.
Right. Given the short timeline that we have of a month, I would suggest that if board members have different areas of concern or ideas, that perhaps we forward them, Liz, to you, and then you can disperse them to the appropriate committees so that not 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now, somebody says, oh, why didn't somebody think of that? It's already on the table, because I can say I'm not going to think of everything. I'm sure nobody else is going to think of everything, but altogether, we probably will be able to cover just about everything. So maybe in the next 2 to 3 days by Friday, if we could get comments to you, I would suggest that that would be helpful.
No, I would appreciate that. And also, if you're socializing, if you're socially distanced socializing, and you hear somebody talking about a plan in another district that there's some good ideas, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. I mean, I'm just keeping track of all of that. So, you know, don't hesitate. And if you get something that you think I may have seen, if you're not sure, forward it to me, because that's what this month is going to be. So, you know, that's all very welcome. Bob?
So have you looked at, I've got a couple questions, but have you done any preliminary look at building capacity?
Building capacity? Is
You
that-
mean in terms of, like, if based on our square footage, what our classroom capacity is, or what our total building?
What our student capacity would be given social distancing?
We've done so
considerations?
probably a month or two ago when they first started talking about the 6-foot distancing in the classroom. I had Chris Bick arrange a classroom like that and do a couple different configurations to see how many desks could fit in there. That is the other piece that we're trying to get clarification on, because something else that's been thrown out there is if you're not wearing a mask, it's 6 feet of social distance. If you are wearing a mask, it's only 3 feet of social distance. So, but we can't, that's not in writing on anything that we have. And in particular on the guidance, the fact that it just gives you the two options basically of 6 feet social distance, and if you can't, wear masks. Well, give us some other in between of, okay, if, for example, you know, they gave the example of a 55 passenger bus, and if you were to do the social distancing the way they're talking about it, it means you can seat 11 students on a bus.
11, yeah.
They, you know, Liz, they did, in the guidelines, or lack thereof, they did have a number they threw out there. If you were to use the 6 foot, and I forgot what the number was, like 1,300.
113 square feet.
Yeah, that
they
one,
gave the
which,
square footage of the student.
right. And I was interesting, I was on a call from,
Yes.
with Middlesex County, and they were already in the midst of a different study for capacity. So he just plugged in the numbers, and it was essentially less than half of the building. And some classes, it depends on classroom size,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So some of them, he had classes of 7 students, and some, consistent with what Liz said, when Chris actually went in there and did the 6 foot thing in a classroom, that was a 12, and you got 12, and that was a 25 to 30 in that range.
Yeah, I think we initially had, yep. And that was also, we were trying to figure out, because with the teacher to be at the 6 feet distance as well, like that was a little more complicated. too,
right.
for the desk.
Yeah, but
Just wearing the mask, so.
Yeah,
and
we did
East
start-
Brunswick was kind enough to give us that spreadsheet, so at least I have a design, so I may just borrow that, like we often do in the education game.
Yep.
And then kind of throw in our numbers with Chris, just to kind of get a big picture. But like Liz said, the guidelines say that, and then they say, but if it's not practical,
Yeah.
do why? So.
And
yeah,
that's
don't do
why,
extra work.
you know, this is very different because it's based on health and safety. It's not just some recommendation of, you know, it's enough when we're concerned with student learning, and we want to make sure that we don't have gaps in student learning. Now we're talking about student health and safety. So that's why I want to get a lot more clarification on some of those things and what's best.
Hopefully
And
the
that,
health official can help.
and that's why I want to talk to and we had the 5 superintendents, the 4 K8s, and I had preliminary conversations with Kevin Sumner and the consulting doctor for the county health department, and they had already started to give us some guidelines and go through them and basically say, yes, these are the kind of the must-dos and these are the nice-to-dos. So that's what we need to have more conversations about.
So, and the reason, I mean, the reason why I bring that up, it seems like the decision tree starts with that, you know, are we can we be all together? And if not, then we're in a hybrid model. Then
Yeah,
the
right.
question becomes, okay,
Right.
what kind of hybrid model do we
Yeah,
build?
I
But it seems like that is, decision A, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And that's why because I know I have that meeting tomorrow. That's why then the other reopening team meetings are following that, because I'm hoping to have some more information by then. I mean, look, at this point, I would say it's highly unlikely that we're going to be able to open school business as usual with everyone there every day. Unless things tremendously change between now and then. Because again, I'm not interpreting the guidelines of do this if you can, and if it's not practical, don't. I don't think that means, bring everyone back. But more to come on that. And it looks like it's going, and that's why I put in that letter to the parents, likely a combination of virtual and in person. So that's what we're going to be working out.
So just real quickly, the other things I was concerned about in reading through the report, the one that actually floored me.
That's pretty good.
Well, I'm sorry. The only one, that's not the only one that floored me, but this one really took me aback, was the idea that the district would be responsible for contact tracing. And I think given the fact that you're going to be in meetings tomorrow with the health officials, I think it's a terrible idea for the school district to be in the business of contact tracing, and that maybe there's something that can be negotiated with the folks at the county health office, because they've been setting up a process of contact tracing, and that shouldn't be on our shoulders. And again, anything that we can get off our plate, would be great. I don't know if you saw that in there or not.
I did, and I had that on my list. I'm going to actually add that to my agenda for the county meeting tomorrow on the list of things to ask about. I agree.
That gave me a
You're saying
headache.
something like, Bob, you're saying something like, if somebody came down with it, the nurse would call the health official. But I think the practicality of it is they'd still have to get all the information from us. You know what I'm saying? Like,
No, but I think, it's one thing to get the information on the student.
okay.
What happens after that? The
I
contact
see
tracing
what you're
is,
saying.
who
Oh,
did
okay.
the student come into contact with? And
Right.
all of a sudden that burden is on us.
Right.
You know,
Oh, okay. You're saying
it's on
outside
us.
school. I guess I
Yes.
interpreted it as just inside the school when I read it, but I see what you're saying.
So, and then the other thing, and I don't know if you heard this, Tim, and you never know where these numbers come up, but there was some estimate that the additional PPE requirements for students, they're estimating to be about $400 per student for a year. So I don't know if that's anything that your folks have seen on the BA side.
You know what? I haven't seen that. They just, I mean, I wonder what that all entails, because I've heard a lot about masks and not even shields, but for the kids, the masks. After that, I haven't heard too much.
Unless they're thinking like
That's a high number.
and I've heard people doing like, do you put up shields for testing when they do like CST testing, and like they're adding in all that kind of.
It could be. I mean, when you get into plexiglass and that sort of thing, it's funny, I had a conversation today with Bernard's, and we were talking about that very topic. It's not just like it's PPE, but like if you're adding plexiglass and things like that, you got to clean it daily. So we're talking about adding additional custodians to do that work. That'll drive it above the 400, I think. So
No, I would think so. I was just, again, as the reality of these numbers become, settling in, and whether it's $300 a student or $600 a student, we're talking close to seven figures just in some of the PPE for students, and that doesn't get into some of the other things. So, I mean, that's again one of my concerns. Why I'm a little tight on the dollar side of things is because I just see these dollar amounts beginning to, creep up on us, and we haven't even talked about the transportation implications here yet. So, all right, I'm done.
Bob, thank you. And, those are certainly things that I'll bring up on my meeting tomorrow.
Can we just clarify the mask requirements for students? Because I thought I was a little confused and maybe I read it too quickly that for students it was optional.
Yeah, encouraged.
Students are encouraged, staff must, but students should, is essentially what it said.
Okay. And can the school require it if the school so desires?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless
It was a rhetorical question, but I wasn't quite sure how to ask it.
Unless a student or an employee has a medical exemption for it,
Right.
I believe that we can. And Greg,
And I'd like to share a YouTube video of somebody with a pulmonary condition who used a pulse oximeter to measure what breathing was like in oxygenation with or without a mask. And you would be surprised that there is no difference.
That's true. I saw that video.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Have we looked at it?
You can see people smiling. That's the problem.
Rita, Barry and Peter, just so you know, have their hands raised.
All right, Barry.
Have we even considered any type of automated temperature monitoring? I know you bought thermometers, but
Yeah, Greg, didn't you say there was something out of Jersey City? You were texting him.
Yep,
they're all over the place.
Barry, we are discussing it. If you look at the guidance, it's not requiring it, but certainly that should be in our conversation of what we want to do as a district.
And
Well,
that's
I
what
think it would free up a lot of staff from having to point the
Well-
little thermometer at everybody, because it
Yeah, we-
automatically picks up
There are a
multiple.
couple of things, just so you know, that I made notes from the report as well. We have to develop a policy for a board approved policy. That's how I'm interpreting it, for screening of students and
Mhm.
staff when they come into the building. So that's something, you know, that will require board action. Obviously, you know, Strauss Esme is already working on a sample policy for that, as is, I'm sure, school boards. And then, Tim, there's also, like I wrote, because I guess our custodial company is going to have to develop a comprehensive guide to how the building's being cleaned. Like there's some requirements in there
Yeah.
that I had made note of. But Tim, you were going to share, because I know you've been.
Yeah, Barry, we looked at a couple right off the bat. One of the things we tried to do was see if we can get something with our video camera system.
Yeah,
And that was extremely expensive. It was
Yes.
above $60,000. And it wasn't terribly effective. If you're wearing glasses, it may not work. So
Right.
we were not thrilled with it. The thing that Greg brought up, and that's the Jersey City Schools.
It was
an
the
article.
municipality. Yeah, it was the municipality, I think.
Was it? Oh, okay. Okay. So we looked at, we did look at what the product they're using. It actually is pretty reasonably priced. It's about almost $1,300 per unit. And they're about 99% effective.
right.
And it's almost like a pole that comes up, and it looks like something that looks like an iPhone sitting on it.
And it has a monitor.
Yeah, it's a
And
monitor. and it's-
red squares track everybody and reads them out.
Yeah, we did, Anthony and I were looking, we did like that. But again, that's something that we, you know, I am a fan, like I think Greg might be. But I am a fan of the temperature thing regardless of COVID.
Right.
Because-
Well, you know, I go
Getting fevers.
to the hospital at least once a week for my foot. And now they used to scan you all over your forehead, and now you just walk in and they're like, okay. And so I was looking at the system, and it's just a stand with a monitor and the camera, and everybody that walks through the door gets scanned automatically. And if their temperature's above normal, then the
They
red square around them goes dark red.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
that's one we're going to discuss in the committee. But yeah, we're
And my-
looking at very strongly.
My point about something like that for the bus was because now the whole bus arrives at the school. We don't have to rescan them. We know the bus is clean, let them in.
Well, and again, and thanks to Greg again for his input. We did get enough thermometers, but that was our starting point, was to
Right.
get one for every bus is really what we were going for.
Yeah. No, I understand, because you get a whole busload of kids at the school and they're clean, then you just move on.
Right. Peter?
Tim, you had mentioned the possibility of plexiglass being used, and I'm envisioning a system where every school is going to be looking for plexiglass, and how are we going to find contractors, and how are we going to bid this stuff and get it by September?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the plexiglass because it's an awful lot of, I don't have enough maintenance guys to put it all up to begin with. And
A
where you
lot of
gonna
work
put
and a
it?
lot of maintenance.
And the cleaning of it is the thing that really concerns me. If you're gonna have to clean that stuff daily, oh my God, I'll have to hire a second team to come in and do that. And that's what concerns me. And I'd love to see the evidence that putting us all in a bubble is gonna, I'm sure it'll help, but I mean,
Okay, so that's more last resort sort of.
I think so. I mean, I hope so, but we
The
haven't even
face
gone
shields
down that whole
actually-
road yet, so.
Right. Face shields, if you're worried about people seeing each other, right? Face shields
Right.
actually allow you to see people. So I had a conversation with some special ed department, I can't remember, and they were saying when they were doing testing, they don't want the kids to wear the mask because they can't see them and they need to be able to talk to them. And so the face shields might be something that's better in that kind of situation because they're usually in a closed environment, in a small closed environment where they're doing that testing. So you need something potentially,
Right.
right?
I like
Harry
the face
Canterade.
shields, guys. We did get some of those too for special ed. And I don't know if you can do face shields without a mask. I don't know the rules yet. I don't know all that.
Yeah.
You can.
But for a teacher, that face mask is really tough to communicate to your class. You know,
Give 'em
I mean,
face
it's really
shields.
hard. If you're sitting there talking with that thing all day, it's hard. That shield, that's a lot easier. I mean, it really is, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if you can just do the shield without the mask. I don't know.
You
I've
mean
heard
the
different-
Greg would know. I think you can.
You mean the efficacy of it? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if I don't I don't know if it's allowed. Can you use just the shield without the mask? I heard you can get it through your eyes, blah, 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 blah.
Greg,
But
and
I mean, just the shield,
sorry.
the effectiveness of the shield would be helpful if it's just that.
The face shield without the mask will not be as effective. I mean, the face shield is more of an eye protection access rather than a respiratory system barrier. And just to be fair, and I know I'm biased because I'm used to being in an operating room and wearing a mask all the time. We communicate all the time with masks. It's really more an issue of getting used to the idea than it is it's not possible. The one thing that I wanted to bring up was getting Mark Zinnemer involved early because there are going to be, I think, a number of legal issues that we will probably want his opinion on in terms of liability issues, waiver of liability, for example, what kinds of restrictions we can fairly put on without increasing our risks, and having him look at a final decision July 31st is probably not the best time to get him involved.
agreed.
Labor is definitely, I'm sure you will have questions.
Yeah. All right.
Mark's on speed dial right now.
I know. Bob?
No, I was just to Tim's point regarding, plexiglass and face shields. They're actually building some barriers out of Mylar, which is a lot more cost effective, but doesn't solve the cleaning problems. But it is lightweight, easy to store and move around, but it's still the same amount of surface to clean. So depending on how it might be utilized or how it would be deployed, it might be another option to take a look at.
Thanks.
This is all really helpful. So that it makes me feel better that these are like most of the administrative meetings we've had and staff meetings we've had lately, where the meeting ends with more questions than we came up with solutions during the meeting. That's not it's just I'm feeling that way with every meeting we have, that it's, this is all really helpful because and please continue to forward this stuff to us because it helps us with planning all of this for all of the things that everyone's thinking of is very helpful.
So I have a question. Where would you use the plexiglass at?
Possibly like the secretarial desks in the offices, where people are, I mean, obviously we're going to be minimizing that, but in my head, I thought of the main office if people ever do start coming in there again. You know, I don't see us putting them on every desk in student classrooms.
Right.
But perhaps,
The bus, that Greg suggested the bus.
yeah, or,
That
you know,
topic
if,
has come
if
up.
our child study team is doing one-on-one testing, you know, to have that up in between them, you know, that again, these are the things we'd have to get recommendations on.
I mean, you go into CVS and they have basically a clear shower curtain hanging from the ceiling to the counter. And they have little slits that they can pass stuff through. So I don't know, it has to be hard plexiglass. You know?
Peter?
I was just, if we were done with this, I was just going to remind people, July 31st is another deadline also
That's true.
for the evaluations of the
You're gonna wait to see
superintendent.
what kind of plan we come up with first before you finish the.
I did mine.
And thank God for that extension.
So we're obviously not gonna make the July 14th, or are we? Do we want to, do you think, that's the thing, is like, so, thank you, Peter. So if we all get it done like this weekend, we could discuss it July 14th, and then we could have our meeting with the superintendent at the end of the month.
I think you said that at the last meeting too.
I did.
This
That was
time she
before
means
the
it.
extension.
Let's just get it done.
Yes.
Let's set a firm deadline.
Hey,
Come
I'm
on.
done.
All right, so July 14th, put it on the agenda in exec. We're discussing. the board
There's nothing like something on an agenda to get you moving.
Right?
And we may, just tentatively, we may want to look at, technically, we have until like August 3rd or 4th to finalize the plan. August 4th is a Tuesday. So once I get more details on what actually has to be board approved, it may, you know, obviously, even if the plan doesn't need to be officially approved, it needs approval by the board in terms of, I think, how, you know, how we operate as a district and a board. So, I mean, we can always do it later on the week prior. It's not that I'm looking to wait till the last minute to notify people, but I would like to give us as much time as possible within this window to get all of this finalized. So I don't know if we tentatively want to plan for a board meeting on, you know, Monday, August 3rd, or that prior Thursday, July 30th. You know, I guess we can wait to decide that maybe on the 14th, once we know, see how things are going and what the specific guidelines are for approval and what things we might need approval on.
And how far, yeah.
But
I
just,
do have one question before we go.
Sure.
What are the rules for private schools?
They're recommendations. They're not, they're not making rules for private schools. Private
Okay.
schools are self-governed.
Right. So they could do whatever the hell they want.
are you saying you want to go private, Barry?
Yeah. We all pitch in, we can buy the district and go private.
There's still.
No, it's just, it's ridiculous to have, you know, especially when it comes to a health thing, to have one set of rules for private and one for public. You know, you're
Right.
talking number of days in school, big deal, who cares? But when you're talking a health concern, the rules should be the same for private and public.
Well, people are asking the same thing about offices. What are offices supposed to be doing? There's no real rules. You know, they talk about retail or the restaurants or whatever, but nobody's come in and said, okay, law office, you can only have this amount of people and you better have everybody wear a mask, right? They're not doing that.
No. Because private businesses aren't going to comply. They're going to do what they want.
Right. Retail, though, anybody where there's the public, they're making decisions.
Private schools have public people in them. So that's all I'm saying is, you know, let's be fair to both.
So Liz, they're not opening the restaurants. What's your plan when the limit doesn't go up to 500 on July 6th?
2 ceremonies. Yeah, I know. Shh, don't jinx it. No,
You knew it was a possibility. We're okay.
So we did. I mean, we planned for this, you know, knowing that it was a possibility. So we will. I just wish we could find out from him a deadline of when he would make that decision by, because if he's, you know, if he doesn't make it by July 4th, then we know we need to send out an update to parents. But if he's going to announce it on Monday,
Right.
you know, that's been the hardest part of all of this, is we don't know when
Yeah.
those decisions are going to be made. So I will keep, all of you updated on that. Right now it's 250. He did announce last night that he was pulling back on the restaurants. He did not announce
That's right.
that he would be pulling back on the outdoor gatherings. So I'm trying to look at that as a positive, that he didn't say anything about it.
I mean, there is a difference
Right.
between indoor and outdoor. There is a difference.
So we'll
You
see.
probably forgot about it.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
All right,
Thank you, everyone.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
second.
All right. All right, thank you.
Adios.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.